Hello, everyone. Welcome and good morning. My name is Rina and I am the CEO of 280 Group. Thank you so much for joining us for this great webinar. So today we will be discussing how to turn challenges into opportunities using whole product thinking. And I'm joined today by Roger Snyder. Roger is the VP of Marketing at 280 Group, and he's also one of our principal consultants and trainers. He has over 25 years of experience in high tech, first working in development, project management, and business development before finding his true passion, product management. Thank you so much for being here today, Roger.
Thank you, Rina, and thank you for taking over the host role that I normally play. So I'm excited to be back in the content position this month, and really appreciate you hosting us.
Thank you. I'm excited to host as well. Thank you, everyone, again for joining us. So, and Roger, I hope everything's okay in the Bay Area now.
Yeah, we've had 7 inches of rain in 24 hours up, or 48 hours up here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So it's been a little bit wet for sure, but knock on wood, power and internet are still on. And
I will too.
All go well.
Well, great. All right, thank you, everyone. And just before we get started with the content, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. I see here on the slide, you see that we are inviting you all to join our LinkedIn group. So after this webinar, we encourage everyone to stay engaged with each other in any online community that you find valuable. In our LinkedIn group, you'll be able to network with your peers, share leadership best practices, and discuss the importance of product management with each other. The link is right now pasted in the chat, so you can go ahead and sign up. At 280 Group, we love interacting with you. And so during this webinar, we really encourage you to ask questions throughout the talk. We will leave time at the end for all Q&A. And I'd like to take this time to answer the 2 most popular questions we receive. First, can you watch this later? Yes, all attendees will receive an email with a link to view the recording after it has ended. And so you'll be able to come back and view the content and the slides at a later time. So before we begin, I'd like to first take a minute and introduce what 280 Group is all about. At 280 Group, our first and foremost mission is to empower product professionals with the knowledge and tools to deliver and build products that matter. This is our reason for being, why we get up in the morning.
Absolutely.
And we at 280 Group, we absolutely apply whole product thinking to our products and services, and we have developed over the past 20 years a suite of services that will help us build a custom solution for product management teams. So whether it is advanced training, whether you need any strategic consulting or advice or any foundational training, we are really here for you. Yes, and now I want to tell you again of what we are doing today. So we have interviewed and surveyed several of your peers to come up with a series for product management leaders. The series goals are intended to help you grow as a product management leader and improve your product management or product marketing team. Our ultimate goal, of course, is to help you enable your team and company to build the best products for your customers. Today's series, or today's webinar rather, will focus on 2 themes: how to transform my team and implications of change. Move to the next slide. And today's audience, this is a snapshot of who we expect to see today. As usual, about half of the audience are product managers or product marketers. We have about 20% who are VPs and directors, and of course, a good number of people who have submitted as others. So that includes a lot of people interested in product management as well.
Excellent. Great mix of folks, and this topic is going to apply to everyone very, very well. In fact, others and POs, product owners, will get a lot out of this as well, thinking about the big picture of what a product looks like.
Yeah, as we know, product management really involves everyone.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well, Roger, you can kick it off.
All right, I'll take it from here. We're talking about the whole product concept. So we're going to lay down a little bit of groundwork here before we get into deeper ideas. But the whole product concept has actually been around for quite a long time. It was first introduced by Regis McKenna and Theodore Levitt, but it really came into its own in Geoffrey Moore's seminal work, Crossing the Chasm. That's where the concept really came into wide usage, right? And this definition I've got over here on the left, and I mean, Wikipedia now even has a standard definition for it. But what I want to emphasize is it's looking at more than just this idea of the out-of-the-box features of your product and thinking about the entire experience of a product. So from the very first time that a potential buyer looks at the idea of, I've got a problem to solve and I need something to solve it, and they start looking at your product all the way through the actual purchase of the product, the use of the product, then when they have challenges with the product, talking about customer service. So it's all of these different aspects that come together to make this whole product concept. Now, in the original definition of it, there were these 5 different layers of the whole product concept. And at 280 Group, we borrowed from some work that was done at the University of North Carolina because we thought this really does a good job of simplifying the idea a little bit. And here what we've got is this concept of there are 3 aspects to the whole product that you really need to concern yourself as a product manager. Now, from my experience of leading product managers for over 20 years, most of the time product managers spend the majority of their time really worrying about what we call this actual product. And I'm hoping you can see my little laser pointer here. But 80% of the time, that's where product managers spend their time. They're all thinking about, well, what are my features? What's the packaging going to look like? What's the quality, right? What's the style, depending on what kind of product you're talking about? This is where product managers spend the bulk of their time. And to a certain degree, that's the right thing to do. However, you miss out on a lot of opportunities to really differentiate your product in the marketplace and potentially find new ways to help your customers when you miss thinking about these other 2 aspects. So I want to go to the top first and talk about the core of your product. And in particular, if you're a product manager, like I've had to do a number of times, who inherits a product that's already out in the marketplace, right? You're hired on, you move into the division of product management and you take over a product and it's already been out there for a couple of years. And you just kind of assume you understand what the product's about. But it's a good time when you're taking over a product, and I even think if you even started this product, it's a good idea to revisit your core of your product every year and think about what are the key benefits that my product really offers? What is it that I'm helping my customer do? And it could be as simple as I'm helping my customer have enjoyment, if we're talking about a product like a toy or Netflix. Or it could be, if we're talking B2B, that this is a product that really helps improve productivity or helps that customer increase their revenue. But you've got to be thinking about that benefit first and foremost, because that should then inform all the decisions you make about the actual product and the augmented product. And in a couple of slides, I'm going to help you revisit this idea of benefits in a little more depth, so we'll come back to that. But then there's this other aspect, this third aspect of the whole product concept, which is the augmented characteristics of a product. And oftentimes, this is where you think about things like standards, installation, integration, services. How do you price the product, but also how do you allow people to purchase the product? Are there finance options available? Are there some other elements outside the main product that you need to add to make that main product more effective or more accessible? And then of course, customer care. How many of you have a service where then when you actually need help, that's when you feel horrible about the product because the customer care experience is not great? And that overall feeling then carries back to your feelings about the core product itself as well. So having good customer care is an essential aspect of this whole product, of these augmented characteristics. So to explain this a little bit better, I want to come up with an example, right? Let's talk a little bit about Uber. And with respect to Uber, the service there, the benefits are the same as a taxi, right? Your benefit of using Uber is to get from point A to point B, right? Without having to drive yourself, right? Particularly if you're in a city that you're not familiar with, all right? So you're hiring someone else's vehicle and that driver to get you from point A to point B. Same thing as a taxi. So the core benefits of Uber versus taking a taxi, they're the same, right? Second, the actual product itself is pretty much the same as well in terms of a taxi driver and their vehicle versus the Uber driver and their vehicle. all of those characteristics are the same as well. 4 tires typically, and a car taking you from point A to point B. So Uber doesn't differentiate itself between taxi service and Uber in either the core or the actual product. So the place where Uber actually shines, where it's different, is in the augmented characteristics of the product. That's where they have made such a big difference in the industry. I mean, they disrupted the temporary transportation industry by providing an app. That's that additional software and hardware. By being somewhere where you can call for Uber the night before with a scheduled call, or you can do it from the lobby when you're nice and safe and warm inside the hotel lobby. You don't have to step out on the curb and do the whole hailing the cab thing like in New York City, right? All of that is different as well. And then the way you actually pay for the service is different as well. You pay afterwards, right? When you're, again, safe inside on your way to your meeting, right? You are able to pay for it in a different way as well. So Uber did not differentiate itself in either the actual product or the core. All the differentiation of that service was down here in the augmented characteristics. And so that's why when I've been leading product management teams, I hammer home the idea to my product managers. You've got to look at the augmented characteristics of the product, because that can be where you can really make a big difference in the whole solution and differentiate yourself from the rest of the market.
Great, Roger. I just want to cut in here and say, when you focus on the augmented aspects of the product, that's not to say those aspects don't provide true benefits for the product, right? So that's kind of the point that we're making here, is you get to uncover new benefits when you take a different perspective on what the whole product is.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is definitely connected, right? You've got to start at the core, understand the problems your customers have, or the benefits that your customers are trying to realize, and then look at both actual product and augmented and find out in this whole mix of things, how can I best satisfy those customer needs, deliver those benefits, and be different from my competition, right? And if you spend all your time in here, you're missing out on lots of opportunities to provide more value to your customers. Great point, Rina. All right, so let's dig in a little bit deeper on those key points, right? So customers pay for value, all right? And that value can come from various different places in terms of perception, right? You oftentimes your value is in comparison to a competitor's product. How much better or worse are the characteristics of your product versus the competition? Also, many times there's the old way of doing things, the status quo. This is the delta from the current solution, right? So this is, how do I do it today? And how will this new product help me do it better, more effectively, or with more fun, depending on what kind of product it is. Now, what we label here as most important, though, are these pain points and these benefits that also include brand. So sometimes brand can actually be a big influencer on the value that people perceive. Think about luxury products, for example. In cosmetics, in fashion, in vehicles, all of those areas are where brand really is a part of the value that's perceived in the product. So don't forget that. But really, pain points for me is the really big one in terms of, can you help solve problems that customers are having? And pain points can also be boredom, right? Especially during the pandemic, that's been a pain point, or mental health has been a challenge, right? So these pain points, think broadly when you think about pain points, but how are you going to help solve customers' problems and solve their pains? Those are the important things to be thinking about in terms of value. Now, who are your customers? Oftentimes when you're in like a B2C circumstance, it's fairly obvious who your customer is. In B2B, it's a little bit more sophisticated. You have to think about not just the end user, but also the folks inside the organization that make the decisions about purchases, the folks that make decisions about, well, how is this all going to work together with the rest of the solutions that we are taking on board in our company, and even influencers, right? And influencers affect B2C as well as B2B. You're listening to the news every day where they've got little consumer segments about great new products. Those are influencers. You read fashion magazines, those are influencers as well. In B2B, it's more about industry associations or particular analysts. So there are either B2C or B2B multiple segments of potential people, stakeholders, that you need to be concerned about, not just the end user. So as you're thinking through all of this, whole product thinking can give you the perspective of, all right, how can I better satisfy everyone who's going to be involved in the purchase decision and ending up using this product? I don't know, Rina, if you want to add anything or if I keep driving forward.
I know you can keep driving forward. I did want to just bring up a quick question based on what we just discussed with Uber from the audience. Sonia did make the point that Uber does pay attention to the actual product as well. So there are differentiators there. And again, I think our point was not that Uber did not pay attention to the actual product, but that there were significant benefits from paying attention to the augmented product as well. I just wanted to answer that really.
Oh yeah, very good point. Absolutely. Yeah, they've gone in deeper and provided a number of features, if you will, as they've evolved the product, no question. Great point. All right, so let's get back to this idea of value and dig a little bit deeper. There are several different sources of value to be thinking about, and this again applies both B2C and B2B in terms of the objective values as well as the subjective values. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is one of my favorite slides when I'm teaching one of our courses, OPM, because it's a great touchstone for you to think through, how can I deliver more value? Think about every one of these bullets, and can I do something that will bring more benefit to my customer when I think about being able to provide a lower cost, or in B2B, increasing their opportunity to generate revenue, or make the product more enjoyable. Now, with the pandemic, which is something that we're talking more about today as well, there have been a whole host of new emphasis in value. People have increased their needs in several areas here. Right? And one of these increases in needs in terms of, again, B2B has been an increase in productivity. So many more people are working remotely. I mean, look at Rina and I, right? She's down in LA in her home office. I'm up here in my home office in Northern California. We haven't been to the office in months, the physical office, right? So we've needed to become more productive in our work at home environments, right? We've also needed more security so that all of the sharing that we're doing across the internet is safe and secure, and that we're taking care of our clients' data in a careful manner, right? So think about those aspects, and they've become more heightened as a result of the pandemic. In terms of more sort of B2C aspects, everyday life has become infused with this sense of needing to be healthier and to stay safe. So those are aspects that if you can find ways that your product can provide some comfort there, or some real increase in capability there of being safe and being healthy, that's very important, because you're all after all trying to help reduce risk. We're all trying to help each other out right now in the pandemic by not spreading the virus. So are there ways that we can do that? And it's not just necessarily masks and washing our hands. There's lots of other things to be thinking about. In fact, later on, I'm going to give you a more concrete example about that. And then convenience has become crucial, right? Of being able to get goods and services that we would normally expect. We can just go to the store and get those things, or order them online. So then ordering online has become way more important and way more convenient. But even for local businesses, and I'm trying to support local businesses as much as I can, because I want them to be there when we are all able to get back out and enjoy life locally, they've had to step up and provide ways to increase their convenience and reduce risks and keep their customers happy. So be thinking about all of these core benefits as you are trying to find new ways to deliver value to your customers. Now, oftentimes product managers struggle with this idea of features versus benefits. You noticed earlier that we had this in the actual product features, right? Well, features are your avenue, your channel to deliver benefits. Right? So you need to have features, and I'm using the example of a Tesla here, where these are all features that are important to have, but really what your customers care about are the benefits. So that's, again, getting back to the core. As a product manager, spend a little less time worrying about each one of the features of your product and start from, what are the benefits that my customers actually care about? And those benefits are going to be the things that I want to deliver on. Now, to do that, of course, I need features, right? So if I want to make my car get better every month, then software updates is a way to do that. But it isn't about the feature, it's about the benefit. It's the fact that Tesla drivers really love the fact that their car gets better every month. I just saw a GM F-150 commercial the other day where they emphasized that they're updating their software in their cars now. So this benefit is now trickling into major manufacturers' vehicles as well. And they recognize that's a valuable benefit, to the point that on national TV ads, I was watching the football games last weekend, on an F-150 ad, they had, look, and we keep providing more value in frequent updates It's like, oh, wow, okay, they've caught on. They know that that's a benefit and they want to offer it and they're advertising that benefit. So be thinking about benefits first, getting to the core of your whole product, and then think about the features that will deliver those benefits.
Yeah, I think that we actually saw quite a bit of this about a year ago when the pandemic first started. Several companies started responding very differently, and one that comes to mind is Zoom, which previously was not really used for schools, for example, right? And so they started thinking, how do we become a much more secure company, because there were so many issues that started coming up from the extended use of Zoom in a new use case. So that's another example where the focus on the benefit, where there was a new use case and a new benefit desired, created a new feature.
Right, right. Where a Zoom bomb before at a company meeting was a mere annoyance, but now that you have a class of 30 students in Zoom with a teacher, you definitely don't want Zoom bombing going on in those circumstances, right? So yeah, really good point. Yep. All right, so we've talked a lot about needing to understand the benefits that you deliver to your customers. How do you go about doing that? Now, this webinar is not a webinar on how to go about doing voice of the customer research, although we're going to do that topic later this year. But I just want to give you some quick tips, right? So techniques to uncover problems, use customer journey mapping, use the jobs to be done framework, and use story mapping. All three are very powerful techniques to get out of and get into the perspectives and skin and the eyesight, and get into the shoes of your customer and walk their mile, understand all of the things that are going on, right, in terms of how they need to operate in their job. In this case, it's kind of a B2B example. And then how do they interact with the rest of the organization, and how does their organization have to deliver its own customer experience, right? So we actually have a customer journey mapping tool, and it's a nice template. And I think we're going to paste into the chat box a link to that template. So download that template. We have a couple of blog posts and webinars on this topic as well. And we'll be revisiting the voice of the customer topic again this year. But this is where you start. Look at your customer's journey and figure out what are their problems, what are their pain points, what do they see as value, remember the value slides, and then come up with the benefits that you really could offer that match your company's capabilities. And then you can think about, okay, how am I going to deliver the most benefit, whole product, and really satisfy my customers? Now, so let's start down the journey of doing a couple of examples. And so what I'm going to assume here is that we did this work. We did all of the market research, and we looked at, okay, what problems do we see today with vehicles? All right, and we came up, as a result of all of this good work that we did, we came up with 4 problems that typical customers have with vehicles. And it starts with, they don't like the purchase experience, right? The used car lot is the example I used here, but it, you know, any in-person experience of buying vehicles has always been just, it's almost as bad as going to the dentist. People have definitely got an opinion that not a fun experience, right? The second thing that we uncover is that folks don't like driving in traffic. There's less traffic lately, but this is going to be a recurring problem when we're all back out on the roads again. And hate driving in traffic is another problem that was uncovered by the market research. The third one is folks want to stretch their dollars. They want total cost of ownership to be as low as possible. So gas, maintenance, repairs, and total cost of ownership, by the way, isn't just dollars and cents. It's also your time, right? So if your vehicle breaks down frequently, or if the experience of having to get your vehicle repaired takes a lot of time, where you have to get out of work, you have to be able to get a babysitter or whatever it might take in order to get your vehicle serviced, that is part of this total cost of ownership. So when you're thinking about total cost of ownership, don't just be thinking in dollars and cents, be also thinking about what other dimensions of value are important to your customers. In my example here, valuable, precious time. And now, you know, more recently we have seen, as a result of the pandemic, how do we go about this whole purchase and use of a vehicle and keep it safe? How do I choose a vehicle? How do I try it out? How do I purchase it safely? So if these are our problems, now we're going to take the whole product framework and talk about how it can be applied to solve these problems. So let's put the concept to work, right? Where are we going to solve each of these problems? That's our first question. How are we going to solve each of these problems? And so let's start by tackling the first, and I'm actually going to kind of pair up here. We're going to go after problems 1 and 4. People don't like the purchase delivery experience, and Now with a pandemic, this has even been amplified in terms of just they really want to be able to choose, try, and purchase a vehicle safely. All right. So I think before I dive into this though, let's find out what our audience thinks, Rina. Let's see how they think, what you've learned so far. Rina's going to launch the poll.
Right. Yeah, so the poll is launched. And Roger, do you want to read out the question?
Yeah, so based on what we've already talked about today, which parts of the whole product can we use to address the need for a better purchase and delivery experience? Do you think it's the core? Do you think it's some of the characteristics? Do you think it's some of the augmented product characteristics? Maybe it's a combination of the core and the actual product, or maybe it's a combination of the actual and augmented product. And remember, right now we're focusing on this purchase and delivery experience with the amplified aspects of the pandemic where it's about being able to choose and try and purchase more safely and be able to get that vehicle in a safe manner. So I'm curious to see what folks think about these.
So the poll is launched. We're going to keep it open just for a few more seconds here. And I definitely like that there is pretty good distribution right now of answers. Yeah, I agree. I think that, Roger, I love this webinar talk. I love hearing how you're describing some of the additional issues that are coming up from the pandemic. Obviously, we're several months into it, but there are still many of these opportunities still out there. We're seeing companies continue to respond to the ever-changing landscape and the new challenges. So I really love this talk. All right, so we have about 67% have voted, so I'm going to be closing the poll and sharing the results right now.
Excellent.
As you can see, about 39% voted the augmented product, and 45% believe it's the actual and augmented product, with a few in between as well.
So over 80% then in those two categories.
Yes.
Right. Excellent. Because I don't see the poll results myself. That's great. Great answer. Yes. Augmented is going to be kind of the center of gravity here for sure. And then actual characteristics and product features probably help as well. Great. So the audience is following along. I love it. So let's dig into this a little bit more and talk about this in some concrete terms. And I'm going to use a couple of examples here. So we'll start with Tesla in terms of their whole concept is that you're able to now order your vehicle online. Right? And they kind of are a pioneer of this, but there are many companies now that are doing this, allowing you to completely configure and order your vehicle online so that you don't have to go to a showroom. You're able to experience the vehicle and see the characteristics of it online, not completely experience it. And I'll talk about that because somebody's already added that service as well. But this online experience, adding the additional software of being able to figure out what model you want and then configure it yourself with this additional web experience is very powerful, right? And then delivery now, Carvana, and I don't, anybody remember the ads of the actual like car vending machine, the multi-story tower of a vending machine of cars was a pretty interesting idea. But in practical matters, most of the time it's about they will put the car on a trailer and they will deliver the vehicle right to your driveway. And
I saw one of those vending machines when I was in China.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, very, very cool, right? So this has, and again, the pandemic has amplified this need, right, of being able to pull up the vehicles of interest, narrow it down to the one that you really like, configure it the way you want, with the color you want, the options that you want, order it, and then have it actually delivered to your driveway. This is an amazing evolution, and it addresses both of these things about the purchase, delivery, and experience not being great, never has been well appreciated. And now in the pandemic, we have all of these other additional problems that we're trying to solve. And I want to kind of put some results in front of you about this. Since the pandemic began, home delivery services have risen 35%. That was just in the first 6 months from the data that I was looking through. GM says their online purchases have tripled compared to before and after the pandemic began. Cars.com has now over half of the vehicles available for home delivery. So 2 million vehicles on Cars.com now are available for home delivery. And here was what I was talking about before. CarMax now even offers 24-hour test drive. So if you really want to truly physically experience the vehicle, you can even get a 24-hour free test drive from home. They will bring the car to you, let you test drive it for 24 hours, and then they'll be back to collect the vehicle from you. And that just, for many people like me who want to actually feel how it drives and have the physical experience of it, that really satisfies another aspect of a pain point customers were having, right? And all of the experts are predicting this is going to be a lasting change, right? So very, very great to see so much innovation here. And again, most of this innovation isn't in the characteristics of the features of the car. It's in all the services surrounding it, right? In the augmented characteristics of the whole purchase experience of a vehicle. All right, let's move on to the next problem that we wanted to solve. The next problem was folks hate driving in traffic, right? And again, I started with the Tesla experience here of auto drive, but almost every car company now is putting in experiences, and there's been several ads now of, like, I think the most recent one was a Mazda ad where it's like the whole family's in the car and then the driver's like, I'm just gonna let the car drive now so we can all have a fun conversation, because they end up in traffic. So this feature, which started out in the Tesla, is expanding widely. And this is an example, of course, of a feature, right? So this is an example where, yeah, actual product characteristics needed to be modified in order to satisfy customers' need. So hate driving in traffic, now there are the capabilities of having auto drive or a semi-autopilot capability in the vehicle. Don't forget, though, that many of the augmented aspects are involved here as well, in terms of standards were required to be able to create technology that interacts all the way through the entire vehicle drivetrain and electrical systems. So there's a lot of integration involved. So even though you may own some pieces of this, you're going to have to work with other vendors and partners to make this all come to fruition. So there's still augmented characteristics involved as well. All right, let's move on to the next problem. Next, total cost of ownership. And I talked about this being multidimensional, right? So in the total cost of ownership area, yeah, once again, we are going to want to work on some features of the vehicle. So in this case, we're going to talk about a whole product view. So oftentimes, total cost of ownership, people are going to think about, well, maybe I just make it more fuel efficient, right? For decades, that's been probably the #1 thing that people think about. But there's a lot more to it than that. When the Prius came out, it came out with the lowest coefficient of drag, even though, and I owned one, so don't get me wrong, I really did not like the look of the vehicle, but the vehicle did a great job at being aerodynamic and therefore reducing drag and increasing miles per gallon. But other aspects, reduced service needs, we talked about that inconvenience earlier, right? And even having service alerts and warnings, so that the vehicle now proactively tells you before there's a major problem that, hey, it's time to pay attention to this problem. And even better, having proactive service notices available. So these are a number of features involved. There's also more augmented characteristics, right? So in terms of better service, better warranties, a number of companies now in the first year, all the maintenance is included for free. So that's another benefit that customers really appreciate. They don't have to think about out-of-pocket expenses for servicing the vehicle. They also have online service scheduling, and they have proactive customer support. To go back to the Tesla example, there's even now, the car notices itself it has a problem, notifies the local service center and says, order this part, we're going to need it, and then tells you, go into the app and schedule visiting that particular service center so that you can get that vehicle repaired. So multiple pieces involved here, right? This last part gets back to being a feature. The car has to have like these capabilities to notice a problem and inform you, but then there's a whole chain of events that are spun off from this in terms of customer care, service center, inventory delivery. This is a whole product example of solving the problem. So if there's a slide where you want a really big view of all the things to think about when you're trying to deliver more benefits, I would say this is that slide, in terms of it takes you all through everything from the benefits to the actual product characteristics to the augmented characteristics of the product as well. So be thinking about this for your products as well.
So Roger, we
Yeah.
have a few questions from the audience. I see Peter has his hand raised. Peter, if you don't mind writing in your question. I'm not sure if this is the one that you wanted to ask, but he's asking if Tesla has Waze as a way to, maybe a partnership with Waze as a way to address some of these issues.
Interesting question. Yeah, so the short answer is no. They don't use Waze. They use their own mapping system, not kind of relevant to this particular webinar. And you could argue about partnerships versus not. I could go deep into that one, but no, short answer is they don't use Waze. They use their own map and their own data they're collecting.
Okay, feel free to, everyone, please continue to post your questions. Some of these we will get at the end of the webinar session.
Absolutely. Good. All right. So to recap, we looked at these 4 different problems that we uncovered from doing our customer research, understanding the sources of value that mattered most to them, the benefits they wanted the most, and we came up with these 4 problems to solve, these pain points. And then I demonstrated to you how to look at this from the core benefits through the actual product to the augmented characteristics and solve all of these problems through many different combinations of these capabilities. And that's the point. Be able to look at the big picture and look at your whole product and think about how to solve these problems. Now, I want to, for our B2B audience, also talk a little bit more about a whole product example. And this one relates to the pandemic as well, right? So in this example, and I really like this example a lot, this was about an example of a company that offers a whole set of products and then found that they needed to provide some additional hardware to solve a new pandemic-related problem. And as it turns out, it actually spun off an entire new product line. So sometimes what starts out as a whole product problem to solve can turn into a whole new line of business. All right, so Herren Group, based in Austria, so we're going international today for our example. They make automated equipment for factory floors. The CNC equipment that does precision drilling or precision part alignment or produces a part out of a cut die, the number of different products they provide. But look at this example. There's a lot of folks working together on the factory floor. And then you have a pandemic. Instant and immediately, a lot of these factories, because they were not essential businesses, they had to shut down. And that presented a problem for Herren, because how is Herren going to continue to sell more product for factory floors and get their service revenue for everything that's on that factory floor if those factories are shut? So Herren Group identified this new problem and said, okay, our products have to be safe to use, and there's no safety issue with respect to the pandemic of their product itself. It was just being together in a factory floor that was a problem. So Herren put their thinking caps on, went to their innovation labs, and they came up with a whole new product that would enable their core products to be in use again, to be for sale, and they came up with something called Safety. Clever name with a DI at the right there. So Safety is a little physical tag that you place on in the jacket or the pocket of each worker, and it allows for both secure and private access. It doesn't require an app as well. So it was another thing where too much technology, no, we don't need an app, we just need this little tag. And if someone then comes out positive, we are able to contact trace where that person's tag was all day long on the factory floor. And you see the little rack at the bottom where you only pick up your tag when you come in to work on the floor for a shift, and you put it back in the rack on the end of the day, so your own personal privacy is not being affected. But this was a whole new product line that was an augmented characteristic for their core business of all of their products that they sell into the factory, but a whole new product line that they are able to sell, and quite successfully from what I read, where now they are helping companies avoid shutdowns, prevent lockdowns, be able to now have all of their equipment in use, and the factories are productive, and that means they're generating revenue, and they've got revenue to buy more Herren Group products, right? So a great virtuous cycle here by solving a characteristic of a product, a secondary characteristic of a problem, and creating a whole new product line as a result. So very exciting to see this kind of work going on, and it comes from whole product thinking. I got to take a second.
Yeah, so I do want to answer a question right now from Sonia around giving an example of finance as an augmented aspect. And I believe, Roger, you actually brought that up with Uber, but there's other ways where the way that a customer pays can be made easier. So we saw it with companies like Affirm providing additional payment options for people to want to buy or make a purchase decision today, but pay over time. So that's a way to add an additional service to your whole product, enabling people to make that purchase decision today instead of, making that a lot easier. So that's an example. I don't know if you have another one.
No, it's a great example. I just want to emphasize a little bit more, especially during the pandemic, where folks may have had shortfalls in their own income. Being able to, for example, get trained up on a new skill or service when you have more idle hours at home, but then being able to pay for it over time which is where the example you brought up with a firm, brings this new ability to learn at home into the homes of folks that may not be able to pay upfront for it, right? So a firm is a fine example of a new way to pay for things. The other finance option that I like to talk about is whenever you're pricing your product, think about pricing it to be associated with the value being delivered. So if you need a product where you don't want to pay a big upfront cost to start having this whole new service, suppose maybe it's HR software, for example, you just want to pay for the number of people using it. So then you want to be pricing per seat rather than say pricing per transaction, for example, or pricing per the number of units you're going to purchase and bring into the building, right? Now with SaaS especially, you want to be pricing in a way that really means lower upfront costs, same idea as with a firm, but increased revenue for you as more value is being derived. So as you increase the number of HR professionals using the software, of course, they'll pay more, right? But that way, by having that per seat subscription price, that's another way of thinking about a creative way to use finance terms. Okay, great questions.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so we're getting near the end, and we're going to save some time for questions. But I do want to talk about, all right, great idea, Roger, but how do I go about putting it into practice? And let's go back to the audience though, and ask them. You know, I'll let you launch the poll, and then I'll read this question out.
Yeah. The poll is now launched. So the poll is, what are your challenges in truly owning the whole product at your company? Is it one of these? Roger, you can go ahead and read the options.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, as a product manager, you may feel like, well, I can't influence delivery or installation, or I can't influence customer service. Maybe I can't influence the finance options that we were just talking about, or the way the product is being priced. Now, we often say, look, product managers should own pricing. And there's a lot of other folks that will weigh in on this one, but hopefully it is a collaborative conversation. But maybe you don't have that capability, right? Maybe it's even worse. You don't own anything beyond those actual characteristics of the product features, or our company doesn't offer augmented services. Maybe you really are in the supply chain only providing the widget itself, and you don't get to offer any of the other augmented services. So I'd like to find out, you know, where are folks on this ability to try to apply whole product thinking?
Yeah, the more I think about it, a whole product has so many different options that there could be several of these reasons why someone might not feel totally empowered owning a whole product. But the polls are open. I did see that maybe a few of you are having some difficulty selecting the options. We're trying to leave the polls open. If you can't select an option, feel free to comment it as a question. But overall, I think we're getting pretty good response. I'll leave it open for maybe a few more seconds.
Yeah, and it may be that you need to influence multiple, like you were saying. That's why I kind of put that fourth bullet there of I don't own anything beyond, right? That's kind of the catch-all one. But you know, if you have multiple, pick the one that you think might be most important in terms of I wish I could influence that one more than anything else. We're just trying to get a sense of where folks are in their ability to practice whole product thinking.
That's right. All right, so more than half have voted, so I will be closing the poll and sharing the results. So, and I know, Roger, you can't see it. So 17 said, I can't influence delivery or installation. 17% also said, I can't influence customer service. 13% said, I can't influence finance options or pricing. 38%, and that's the majority, say, I don't own anything beyond product features. And 15% say that our company doesn't offer augmented services.
Okay, all right, good. That's good to know. I'm actually encouraged by the fact that the lowest percentage was the one about influencing over the finance and pricing. That's encouraging. Because product management in the last 5-10 years has definitely gotten more of a seat at the table when it comes to talking about pricing. That's really great to hear. The 30% on beyond product features, right? We're going to tackle all of this a little bit. I want to give you some tips. Right? Some ideas here for how do I go about that. So first one, I don't really own the whole product. Okay, right? That was a large percentage of you said that. So a couple of tips here on how to do that. Number one, I say is bring the data. If you can provide some examples, and what I find typically here is competitive examples are a good source of this. If you can find a competitor where some of the augmented characteristics of the product seem to be how they are differentiating from your products, that's something that you want to get some good market research and data from. Good customer surveys can help with that, as well as talking to prospects or even talking to folks that use the competitive product. get that data together and then demonstrate to the executive staff or your leadership of, look, without thinking about these other characteristics, we're missing the opportunity to be more powerful versus our competitors. That's very important, right? And then, honestly, as an individual product manager or as a product management leader, you should be working on your influence skills. And we have a couple of blog posts on this that you can read about this, where it's important for you to have the data, but you also have to be persuasive. And one of the techniques that we often use there is thinking about what's in it for me, right? What's in it for the other parties that they're going to want to listen to you. So you bring the data, but then you also say, wouldn't you want to make our whole company more effective? Suppose I'm talking to the customer service team. Wouldn't you want all of us to see more revenue for this product as a result of improving customer service? And that would benefit everyone in the company by having more revenue, right? Or if you can improve customer satisfaction and the customer sat numbers go up, and you can tie that to having better customer service, that's going to make the leader of customer service look better too. So you're helping their career as well. So think about things where you can influence what matters to the people you're talking to. And then you've got to have real data that shows that by thinking about the whole product, you can actually deliver a better solution and garner more market share or generate more revenue. Now, for those of you who don't have that perspective even more broadly in terms of the company doesn't work that way, I already talked about competitive examples are important. Demonstrate a return on investment. Roll up your sleeves, get a spreadsheet out, and show what, say, a 1% increase in customer satisfaction might do in terms of the number of new customers you could garner in a year. So if you actually roll up your sleeves, get some data, you'll have to use some assumptions, of course, but provide an actual return on investment. That's also going to be very motivating, particularly here. Go get help from the finance team. Finance folks love to see ROI. They love to see actual numbers that if I invested this amount of money in improving customer service, I could get this return. They're going to be on board. So then you get multiple constituencies starting to surround this idea of, wow, okay, let's think about this whole product and get better at that. And then honestly, I've done this a few times when I ran product management teams at various companies. This is not a short-term win. This is a long-term play. It is something where you are definitely going to have to be patient and be persistent in how you go about doing this. So like I said, find maybe just your biggest pain point inside in terms of like a particular area where you really think, if I just focused on that one aspect of my whole product, I would be able to get a big win. Focus on that one area, demonstrate that with getting the data, providing the ROI, thinking about what's in it for the other partner inside the company, work together on that, solve that problem, demonstrate the actual value, and then you start getting this flywheel going where you're able to expand more rapidly your reach, right? So that's important to start with your core, establish these new key needs, define the benefits, then expand your influence over time. Pick that particular attribute, improve that one thing. Get those and then you do have to put into place metrics, right? So the only way this works is if you are saying you measure something before, I'm using customer service, before you improve customer service, here's where we were. We went in, we put in all these new customer service capabilities, and now our metrics have risen as a result of that work. And you're going to do this over 6 months, right? This is going to take a while. If you could find a shorter example, right, where you're able to add just an app, for example, maybe, and that app creates some new capabilities, that might be a shorter win. But have the metrics in place, and then you'll be able to get things going where, okay, wow, product management brought to attention this need, and they were able to demonstrate that it added value both for us and for our customers. Now your influence is going to expand to be able to do this over a whole bunch of different characteristics of the augmented characteristics of your whole product. And then you can expand more rapidly. But yeah, this is a longer term effort, I must admit. But if you can find a short-term win, a quick win, that's awesome. But be prepared to use these techniques to expand your reach.
Right, I also want to add for the folks who say, I don't have influence on this team, something Roger said earlier is you don't have to do it necessarily alone. If you can practice the what's in it for them and get a stakeholder on that team involved, the sooner they can be involved, the better, then they can help champion some of these efforts as well.
Absolutely, great point. All right, well, I'm hoping I saw a lot of blinks on that little question mark thing.
Oh yeah.
I know we're going to open our poll first, but then let's spend some time on Q&A.
That's right. So everyone, if you can help us, with answering this poll, we're really interested to find out if you thought this webinar was helpful. And now, Roger, I think I'm going to start with the last question first because it's related to what we just talked about. So we have a question here from Sanir, who's asking specifically around pricing. How do we leverage some of this whole product thinking when we don't know what the customer is willing to pay, which factors are influencing that? So can you throw some light on the aspect of augmented product in understanding this better? So what is the perceived value?
Yeah, so good question. Again, go really deep on this, but let me give you a couple of tidbits. When you're trying to figure out the value of something, suppose I'm going to add a service, right? See if you can find an analogy in either your industry or in another industry where there's already examples of some tiered services, for example, that where people are willing to pay more for having a better service, right? There are examples where in B2B, for example, you have what's called a service level agreement, and you're able to say, well, if you just want 24-hour response time, you pay this much for your annual service contract. If you want 12-hour response time, you pay a little bit more. And you can then see, well, what that dollar amount is. That tells you a sense of how much do people value that additional response time. Now you look at your own product and say, okay, if I brought that new capability of where I'm going to tier my customer service and provide better response times, you have a sense of how much people value that already by looking at analogy in another industry. So again, it starts with what are the core problems you're trying to solve, what are the benefits, the pain points, identify areas where you think that might be, and then go look in your industry or in another industry where there may already be examples you can leverage to see, well, how do people price differently those opportunities? And that gives you a sense of what that dollar amount can be. Yes, of course, you can also just go out and conduct surveys. You want to use conjoint analysis in that case, because whenever you ask somebody, people, how much are they going to pay for something, they don't give you a good answer. The conjoint analysis is a way of conducting a survey where you can get a dollar amount associated with how much people value one set of capabilities versus another set of capabilities or services.
Yeah, I want to echo that. We get the pricing question quite a lot. It's also one of the hardest skills, but it's also, I think pricing is very interesting because you can experiment quite a bit more with pricing than you think, with sales and other ways where you can establish, what are people truly willing to pay. I agree that it is difficult, but I think that what we're discussing today is there's elements in the augmented product which can create ease of use for purchasing, like what we talked about with finance, or it can assist in helping, help with the customer service aspect as well. So when customers are less frustrated and take less time in using your product, usually that requires additional service, but you can also price higher. Right. So here's another question. This one's from Peter, and it's a great question. It's where do you sum up all of this information? Do you also use a kind of business model canvas? So what are some tools that we can recommend?
Right. So when you're thinking about a whole product, it helps to have done some customer journey work, for example, or have a story map. Both of those, when you have those done, and like you said, use a canvas, we have a template you can download to get started with, then you go back over that and have the whole product image available, have the set of customer journey ahas that you've discovered, and then start thinking back and forth. Okay, how do I go about solving those problems for my customers, thinking broadly? And that normally is where you are going to put that up on a big whiteboard, or these days maybe Mural or Miro, where you're collaborating online these days. I have to think about that, right? Because that's what we're doing too. Have a big mural where you're able to put up in the mural the results of your customer journey map and the whole product image, and then people can start throwing post-it notes up there and start talking about, well, where are all the different things I could try to be doing? And that mural then is something you keep coming back to over and over again and refreshing, and it's an infinite canvas. The nice thing about it is you just keep adding more space as you start diving deeper into the areas of, like, okay, I think maybe customer service is going to help here, or I think a new finance option is going to help here, or we've got to come up with a new way to integrate that takes some partnership work. Then you can start expanding out. So I would suggest using Mural and use some of those templates that I've been talking about.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think it's in line with This one, which is, given that there are so many aspects, how do I decide which augmented characteristic of my whole product I should focus on first?
So I think, again, you want to look at the key sources, the biggest pain point. Try to tackle these things maybe one at a time by biggest pain point, and then the next biggest pain point. And then for that pain point, you want to brainstorm and use some of the brainstorm tools. We also talk about brainstorming, I think, in one of our other blogs, of how can I get out of the box of I just need to make my product faster, or make my product smaller, or make my product cheaper, and think about other ways to go about this. It's not easy, I got to admit. I can't tell you that, oh, always go to customer service first. I don't know, until you know that pain point, you're not going to be able to kind of narrow in on what are some of the areas of the augmented characteristics that are going to be most effective. But do also step out of your industry and look at other industries. Once you've identified a pain point, go see how that pain point may have been solved in other industries, and that may give you some clues too as to what augmented characteristics might be valuable in your industry. Okay, hope that helps.
And we made a couple other suggestions here in terms of when the landscape is changing, like what we faced last year. That actually provides a great opportunity for us to step back and say, what has changed at our customers? So Roger mentioned that people are working from home. That creates an opportunity for you to address a pain point for how do I stay connected? How do I reach all of the different users differently? People want safety and security. So there are, anytime that there's a significant shift in the market, that also provides an opportunity to reassess the whole product. So I have a question here, and this one's earlier, and I think it's a tough one, so we'll see if you can answer it. Scott asks, why is brand one of the two most important parts of value, as the earlier slide indicates? I'm not sure which slide that was, but can you talk about brand as augmented product?
Sure. Brand is challenging. In some industries, brand does not matter much. So let me just say that right off the bat, right? So it may not apply to your particular product, right? But oftentimes when there are a set of tiers of value, and let's use automobiles because we've been talking about that quite a bit today. The Yaris at the low end of the Toyota line versus the Avalon at the top end of the Toyota line, those brands immediately communicate what you're getting for your dollar. Right? The Yaris is going to be entry-level college student, no frills, gets me from point A to point B, whereas the Avalon is, I want some luxury, but I'm still in the Toyota wheelhouse, versus then going on up to Lexus, which is even now immediately communicates higher luxury, right? So just those three names immediately communicate something, and that's where the value of brand is. Brand helps immediately narrow down choices rapidly. So if you can establish a brand that has value over everything else, then you are able to use that value to your advantage. You have to advertise less, honestly, and you are able to get people to come and choose your choice, your product first, when there's a big understanding of brand. So that's why we say it's one of the big contributors to value. But it doesn't always apply. I want to be clear about that.
I also want to echo just in terms of what we talked about just now with whole product thinking, brand strategy can influence which aspects of the whole product you focus on. So if your brand strategy is we are going to be low price, and so we're not going to increase our service, then in your whole product thinking, service may not be an element that you really focus on and prioritize. So it goes both ways. So long as the brand is known and is consistent, then your customers know what to expect as well.
Right, great example. And it affects things like packaging as well, right? So high-end brand is going to have some really nice looking packaging. A low-end brand, you should spend less money on your packaging. So it influences those aspects as well.
That's right. Well, thank you all for your questions. We got to almost all of them. For the ones that we didn't get to, we'll try to respond to them after this webinar. We thank you for joining us. Roger, if you want to continue with some of the wrap-up slides.
I think we had that's all we had for this month.
Well, in that case, continue to tune in. Thank you for joining us this morning, and look out, join our newsletter, and look out for further webinars to come. Thank you so much, everyone.
Come to 280group.com, check it out. And like I teased, we're going to have a Voice of the Customer webinar coming up. I don't remember if it's next month or the month after, but that'll be another one that will help you at the front end of the whole product experience, understand what your customers' needs are so you can get at that core benefits that you need to offer. Hope this was helpful. Look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.